Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. I am Thomas Vick, joined by my co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I was really excited to get to talk to you. We kind of had to push our timing today because I had some court required appearances. And that's always fun to be a part of that situation. I think it always helps me keep perspective for what I do from a day to day because when folks are faced with that possibility of court, brings up some of those nerves or unease, especially if you're the person involved in the proceeding. The lawyers are a little bit more familiar with that typically, but always felt like that was a good thing. And then I'm always kind of looking at how the court does things and are there things I can incorporate in my practice to make things better and or more effective. We talk a lot about that on this podcast for how we do things. So thought using that might be a good topic for today as we're talking about the life cycle of a case in a law firm, right? How do we communicate, prepare clients for, what's going on once we've got that matter in the office?
Yeah, it's a great topic to discuss. We live in an age where we have so many different options in how we communicate with a client. I was thinking just the other day about how when advising somebody, and starting a law firm, the number one thing that you got to do is get the phone ringing. Some way, somehow, you got to get the phone ringing. That's kind of the primary way that clients, historically have communicated with law firms, but we just have so many different options now. And we talk about Clio a lot, and Clio has a lot of different ways in which we can communicate with our clients. And yeah, I just love the optionality that you have there. So maybe we could start with the client portal. That's kind of a unique thing that Clio has, and some other law practice management programs may have something similar. But once you have created a matter in Clio Manage, you're able to add the client to the client portal. And, if you're co-counseling with another attorney, such as Mr. Seth Wilson here, you might add him as a participant in that client portal. And it's a great place to send messages back and forth in a secure manner. When I send a message to a client, the client will receive an email that says you've received a message in the client portal. And then click on this link and that'll take you to the client portal, and then you'll see the message from the attorney. And it's kind of neat how secure a feature it is, because once that email is sent out notifying the client that there is a message to be received and read, that link will time out such that you have to get a new message from the attorney in order to be able to see the message. And so there's some verification system that is tied into that. And you might be able to speak to that a little bit, but that's just a great feature to have messages that are shared back and forth, and not only messages that you can share in one spot and kind of keep it contained, but also you can have attachments that can be uploaded to the portal. And so it's really nice because once the attachments are in the portal, they're also included in your folder files in Clio Manage. And so you got everything just in one place, and you can look back at the messages that have been sent over the course of the pendency of the matter and see what exactly has happened and what still might need to happen. What has been your experience, Seth, with the Clio for clients? Right, that's the name of it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a mouthful, right? You've got all these C's, and we kind of kept that continuity through there as well in our law firm life cycle. But Clio's client portal is a relatively recent addition. I mean, it's been several years now, but it's still something that some clients aren't as familiar with. They're comfortable with email now, but they're not so comfortable with the portal. And so that's really kind of where we see the challenge, if you will, because the portal is much more secure. So when you're thinking about that data security and privacy of information, email is not a secure communication tool. I think everybody understands that now, but that information that goes by email is pretty much available to whoever might be able to track it. Client portal is behind a secure login on a website that's secure. It's a little bit like a social media platform, if you will, where you have that message history and you can scroll back up or down, or almost like a text message on your phone where you can see where that information is. And so once you sort of show the client the value of that and the relative ease of use, they get adapted to it very quickly. And it's very easy to upload court orders there, so they have a copy of those. And then you can make sure, you're looking back through and say, hey, yeah, if you just scroll up to, 9:45 this morning, I sent that over to you. You should be able to get access to it, and you can walk them through. The other thing I really like about it is there's a mobile app available. So if a client has a smartphone or an iPad or something like that, they can download that app. And then if they have pictures or audio recordings on their phone, those can be uploaded pretty simply by sharing into the app, and then that uploads from there. And again, can help facilitate the transfer of information. And so we've really encouraged our clients to try to utilize that to help with that communication piece. I will say one thing about it that's interesting is how you bill for your time in the portal, because it seems a little bit more informal, if you will, than say writing a lengthy email with an explanation when it's a one or a two sentence sort of discussion. So making sure that the billing of that is accurate for all purposes. And so that's one thing that just from a practice standpoint used to be kind of the communication would always take a point one, if you will. And now there's a lot more frequent things. And so I just try to make sure I'm cognizant of that as I'm going through the day, and try to make sure we're communicating with that. And frankly, I end up not billing a lot of the time in the portal because of the back and forth, and I can't sort of quantify it. And so that's just kind of been my approach.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the portal is advantageous because everything is there in one space, as opposed to email, where you got one email here, one email there, and you just don't know exactly what all has been said. If you can get all the team members that are going to be working on a matter into that client portal, they're going to be able to see what is happening. I think in the last episode, we talked about how Clio has Outlook now, a feature where you can just drag and drop an email, and that will add the email to the file in Clio Manage as a communication log. And that's helpful, but it's also not as accessible, in my opinion. And the other team members that might need to see that email may not see it in actuality, even though it's available to them. And so, from a practical standpoint, I almost think that just forwarding the email to the team member that needs to see it is kind of a more practical method of handling it. So yeah, I think there are definitely some advantages to the portal over email. What are some other ways that we can communicate with clients? We talked about email, we talked about the client portal, but what are some other ways that um, we can talk with our clients?
Yeah, again, I think your point on email is really important. And I think what that brought to mind is there's not a one size fits all solution to the communication challenge. And I think a good practice management system will account for all of those variables to make sure that whatever works for your particular practice area and for your particular client base is available. So, for example, in Clio, they do have an internal text messaging tool where you can text your client. And I'm of the age, I don't know if you're quite there, that I didn't grow up with texting. That wasn't kind of a thing that I did. And so I'm not really great at the whole text message thing. I've tried to get better at it over the years, but it's a hard medium for communication. And so there's also a lot of data security concerns and data privacy concerns around plain text or SMS messaging. So I would never put anything client specific or client related in there other than, hey, we need you to call us. We got something going on, or we have an appointment, or something like that. So very plain vanilla kind of communications of, hey, we're trying to reach you, left you a couple messages, could you please give us a call back? Because so many people now do rely on texting. And that's sort of the, hey, I'm going to send you a notification that I need you to do something else or log in over here or whatever it is. And so that feature is available. And sometimes it's the only thing that's effective at getting in touch with your client. And
That is
obviously,
so true. It's the only thing that's effective.
and so that's our duty, right? We have a duty as an attorney to communicate with our clients. And so as a lawyer, you want to make sure you're doing that to the best that you can, so that tool is available. And then there's a record of everything that was texted back and forth with the client in your Clio managed database as well, which is great. So I just always caution lawyers, don't put confidential information out there, and keep it as high level as possible of, hey, please contact the office. I don't even usually say this is an attorney unless it's sort of that initial communication where I'm trying to get in touch with somebody and it makes sense to disclose that I'm an attorney. The number that it uses, frankly, I don't know where those numbers come from. It was just assigned to our office, so it doesn't match our area code and that. So I don't want to be disingenuous with someone, but if I've tried several times to get a hold of them and they're not responding, I'll often send them, hey, this is Seth from Adler Attorneys. Please give me a call. I've been trying to reach you, kind of thing. And a lot of times that works.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been my experience. Whenever we've done, for instance, an estate plan for somebody and we've got the binder that's ready for them to pick up, we will have sent an email to the client and maybe even responded to the email and said, hey, we'll give you a call or give us a call so that we can schedule a time. And then we give them a call and then we have to leave a voicemail and maybe two times leave a voicemail and we're still not getting communication and response, then you send a text message and typically there's immediate response. A lot of people will, and I'm probably like this as well, as much as anybody, I don't look at my email as much as I do my text messages. My emails have a tendency of getting lost from time to time. And so I don't always respond to email and clients are the same way. But people always check their text messages. People don't have unread text messages. And so there's just a whole lot of benefit in being able to shoot a quick text message and say, hey, I've been trying to reach you. Let's figure out a time where we can talk. And that's really, really helpful. That's been just a tremendous feature that has been added recently by Clio and has really aided a lot in being able to effectively communicate with the client.
Yeah, and I think you brought up another important point there, Thomas, is there is in Clio ways to make records of your communication attempts with the client. So whether that's in person or by phone, or we mentioned email last week, but when we're talking about that log, what I like to do is utilize Clio's phone log feature. And you can profile the record, so to speak, and put in like who was it from and who was it to and all the, you can get as much detail in there as you want. But I typically will just add the matter, add a phone call to who I was trying to reach. And then what did I do? Did I leave a message? Was the voicemail full? Did we leave a message with a receptionist, try to get that individual's name, make sure we had some point of contact? Because tomorrow I won't really remember. So it's really helpful, if I have to go back the next week because I haven't heard from someone and follow up and say, hey, it's been about a week since we talked last, or when I last tried to communicate with you, because maybe they were on vacation or what have you. And so having that phone log right there separates it out from all my other communication attempts or discussions and gives me a good record of, look, we've tried really hard to communicate with you, or nope, maybe we should have communicated with you more because I don't see in my file that we really did and it was really on us. And so it's really that habit of every time I make a phone call, I'm trying to make a phone log for what I do there. And if it's a call and a return, I don't necessarily make two different logs in the same day. I just kind of keep it in the same one and adjust that one. But that's been a good practice for me.
Yeah, and as an estate administration attorney, our clients are fairly responsive to the clients or to our communications. So I'm not really trying to paper the file, so to speak, to say, I've done everything that I needed to do, when it comes to estate administration, but in other areas of practice, and it really could be any area of practice, you want to have that communication log so that, if you're the attorney of record with a judge, you can cite to the communication log and say, hey, I've made all these attempts and there has been no response. there's really been a breakdown of the attorney-client relationship. Judge, I'd love to continue, but they're just not a client really anymore. I've had situations where that has happened, and it's been helpful. I think of those that are, do public defender work where clients are not always the most responsive, not the best clients ever in some cases, and being able to talk to the judge and say, hey, I have not been able to reach my client. I've tried every week and I've gotten nothing. I've tried all these phone numbers, I've gotten nothing. So I've had that experience in the past as an attorney. And so that's really, really good. You mentioned the communication log. I've started to add this to my habits. After I get done with a phone call, I will transcribe from memory what happened in the phone call so that I've got a record of it. And I'll use Clio Duo to do that. And sometimes when I say, when I enter whatever it is in Clio Duo, sometimes it'll come up suggested as a communication log, which is fine. Sometimes it's suggested as a note, which is also fine. But you can kind of just rehash what happened on the phone call, what was decided, and then you've got a record of it in Clio that you can just immediately save, and it's there. And that has been helpful, to use in the past few weeks as I've been getting used to Clio Duo.
Yeah, and the benefit of that is it creates that date and timestamp of when that call came in, and you can add the duration, right? You can add a time entry right from there if it's something that needs to be billed to the file. Or even if you're just tracking time and want to know, hey, this is a non-billable thing, but I want to track it, you can add a time entry from right there and everything's captured, saved in the file, and then you can go back and find it very easily later. And you mentioned Clio Duo. I think one of the benefits of that is as you give that file more information and more context, the better the AI can help of, wait a minute, you may not have a task for this particular thing, but you mentioned that you needed to do something and it showed up in a note or a calendar entry or something, and it's able to surface that of, hey, don't forget you were going to call the client and wish them a happy birthday. Well, it wasn't a calendar event or whatever. And so, but you mentioned you wanted to do that. And so now the AI can help surface some of that stuff by those key phrases like I needed to do this, or remind me to do this later, or I need to make a note to. And that benefit, I think, will continue to grow as the AI gets better.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, so Clio, it's got capabilities when it comes to email. It has this client portal and the app Clio for Clients that has been tremendous. You've got these phone logs and email logs that are on there, and the ability to send text messages and receive text messages from the client. So just a lot of different options that are out there for client communication, and there's really no excuse not to talk to your client when you got all these tools at your.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll add to that, Thomas, in terms of the tool set is the Clio app for the attorney. So you have that available on your mobile device as well. And one of the nice things about that is it almost does work like a text message app on your phone where you can just tap into the application and go right to your inbox and you're ready, and you can work through each of those items pretty quickly. And it's actually, I think, a little bit better than the web interface, mainly because it just kind of feels like it was built for the phone, and that's kind of the thing. But um, there's just some psychological thing there, I suppose. So that's another tool that's really beneficial. And I talk a lot about in the stuff that I write about and the things we've talked about in the past of kind of being able to have a palm practice. You can practice law from the palm of your hand. And that's what Clio really enables you to do utilizing their mobile applications.
And that may be a topic for another day, Seth, because I've got some things to explain about how I use Clio for attorneys on the phone. I use it pretty often when I'm in court. So I'd love to talk about that on another podcast.
Hey, accidentally on purpose, right? We figure this stuff out as we're going along. So,
That's right.
hey, always appreciate the time, Thomas. I think the one last piece of advice that I have learned over time is try not to find a one size fits all solution. I think it's important to have this system and kind of say this is our preferred methodology, right? So identify, are you going to primarily communicate via the portal? Are you going to primarily communicate via email? Are you going to primarily communicate via whatever the methodology is, phone, fax, whatever that is, and kind of set that order of priority. But then you have to adapt it for each client to meet that client where they have need. And sometimes they're not comfortable with electronic things because they don't want their information out there. And so you want to make sure that you're being aware of that in light of your business realities and the obligation that we have to communicate. And so be aware of that as you go as well, but have that plan, but be willing to adapt it to the particular client situation.
Absolutely. Be flexible when it comes to client communication. That's an excellent word to the wise there, Seth. Well, I just want to encourage everybody to go to our YouTube page if you're not there already and click subscribe. Subscribe to the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. We would appreciate your support. We're going to continue to put content out there about how to help lawyers launch and just continue to be a resource for all those attorneys out there that are trying to start their own firm or maintain their firm and try to grow it. So we would be happy for you to go ahead and hit subscribe on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, and again, we really want to be that resource. So if there's questions or comments, feel free to leave a comment on the videos, and we will try our best to either work them into a personal response to you or into a future episode where we talk about these topics. We get a lot of communication throughout the week, anyways, we just talked about, and so can't promise a prompt response to everybody, but we will be monitoring those and adding them to future topics for the channel.
Yeah. Well, everybody, have a good day. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Thomas. We'll see you next time.